Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening or watching our replay online on our website. My name is Esther Wells, and I am the president of the Montgomery County Taxpayers League. Joining me on the screen is Joshua Montgomery, who is our vice president, Gordon Brenny, who is our treasurer, and our guest of the hour, Chris Conklin, who is the director of the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. So a little background on Montgomery County Taxpayers League. You can get more information online on our website at www.mctaxpayersleague.org, or you can follow us on social media on Facebook at MCTL, on Twitter, MoCo Taxpayers, or you can reach out to me directly or our board members at presidentmctl@gmail.com. So the objective of the Montgomery County Taxpayers League is to educate and advocate for county taxpayers. We support appropriate actions to achieve greater efficiency and effectiveness in Montgomery County government and tax equity for Montgomery County taxpayers. Our vision is focused on performance and outcome. We host presentations like this one this evening with local elected and appointed officials on topics which have an impact on the county's finances and consequently our taxes. We also take part in various public meetings and other advocacy. Please pencil in your calendar for December 6th at 7 p.m. We will be meeting with Brian Hull, who is the Chief Operating Officer at MCPS, to discuss upcoming FY 2025 operating budget and answer community questions. Currently, we have some open leadership positions and volunteer opportunities. So again, if you are interested, please reach out to me at presidentmctl@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on social media as well. And lastly, if you see anything around the community that you would like us to be aware of, engagements or events, parades, opportunities for MCTL to attend and advocate for members and taxpayers, please definitely point us in that direction. So with that, I want to introduce Chris Conklin, a little bit about him. Chris Conklin was confirmed on October 29th by the Montgomery County Council as the new director of MCDOT. Conklin, who has served as Deputy Director for Transportation Policy since joining the county in August 2016, was nominated for the director's position in October by County Executive Mark Elrich. Over the past 3 years, Chris Conklin guided the implementation of new transit services like the Ride-On Flex, Executive Connector, and the US 29 Flash project. He has worked to advance pedestrian safety and bicycle infrastructure projects, represented the county in regional efforts to secure long-term capital funding for the Washington metropolitan area. Sorry, one second. To admit. Has represented the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, improved development review processes, and led sustainability initiatives like the county's streetlight replacement program. Prior to joining MCDOT, Conklin spent 23 years at the planning, engineering, and environmental firm VHB, where he was managing director for the National Capital Region. He is recognized for his experience in multimodal transportation strategy, planning, engineering, stakeholder and public participation, project management, and team leadership. During his career, he has worked with transportation organizations throughout the nation, including cities and towns, counties, states, regional transit agencies, and federal agencies. Conklin holds a bachelor's of civil engineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology and 2 master's degrees in transportation and technology policy from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and is a licensed professional engineer in Maryland and Massachusetts. So please help me welcome Mr. Conklin. Thank you for joining us this evening to discuss your role at the Montgomery County Department of Transportation and answering our questions submitted from the community. We hope this meeting is the first of many conversations and engagements.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm not a member of your organization, but I'm also a taxpayer in Montgomery County. So I am always interested in making sure that the work that we do is efficient and as effective as it can be. Just a little bit of addition to that introduction. I've been the director since the fall of 2019. So 4 years, but it feels like an eternity. It was a very difficult period, obviously, starting this job in 2019 and encountering all the headwinds of the COVID pandemic not long after taking the role. And I'm happy to say that we've I think, navigated the situation fairly well and are doing a good job delivering services in the capital program for Montgomery County. I've got a short presentation here that kind of gives some highlights of what the department's about and what we do. So I'll go through that, and then I know there's a series of questions that you'd like me to speak to, and I'll be happy to do that as well. So what is it that Montgomery County Department of Transportation does? We have about 1,300 employees, and we provide a variety of different services, including maintaining and operating the county's road system, which is about 5,500 lane miles of streets in the county. And a bunch of those are all arterial roads, although the state also maintains a number of the arterial roads in the county. There's about 517 bridges in our inventory that we're doing inspection on and developing repair strategies to make sure that those bridges are safe and stay in service. We have a 385 bus fleet for transit operations, and our ridership is approaching pre-pandemic levels now with around 60,000 passengers a day. We have a traffic operations and management center that monitors the status of all of the traffic signals throughout Montgomery County, and through a network of cameras, manages the traffic flow on our major corridors. There are about 860 traffic signals that we maintain and operate every year, and 240 traffic cameras that keep an eye on what's happening on our roads. We operate around 25,000 paid parking spaces in our commercial districts, in the lots and garages in Wheaton, Silver Spring, and Bethesda, and additional lots and on-street parking in North Bethesda, around Wheaton, and in the Great Seneca Science area around Shady Grove Medical Center. We have a micro-mobility program where we have scooters and bikes that are operating, and people who have traveled about 160,000 miles on those services in the last year. And we're also working to implement a pedestrian and bicycle network around the county. We have about 1,600 miles of sidewalk that we maintain. Those are lit by about 67,000 streetlights. That's a lot of streetlights. About half of those are county owned, and about half of those are owned by utilities. And we have 107 miles of bike lanes in our system. To do this, we have a significant operating budget, over $250 million annually. More than half of that is used to provide transit service within the county. That's the ride-on network that you may use. About 22% of that is used to maintain and operate the traffic and roadway network, and about 10% is funding the parking system, and that 10% is entirely funded based on user fees, not general tax revenues. Our capital budget is about $4 billion. The majority of that is related to transit improvement projects. A lot of that is in the construction phase, as you can see from the chart here. So we have made a significant change in the capital program between the late 90s and early 2000s and today, where our road network is largely built out, save for a few roads that are still in the program. And the majority of our investment is in retrofit projects to improve safety on those roads, and to improve pedestrian and bike accommodation, and to improve our transit operation. We have 3 priority areas that we focus our programs on. Safety and Vision Zero is our highest priority. We're really looking to drive down the negative outcomes on our road network. Serious and fatal collisions are our focus here, looking to get to 0 by 2030. We have made significant progress on our high incidence corridors, where we've seen a significant reduction in serious and fatal collisions. However, the overall number of fatalities and serious collisions has not trended down as much as it has in those focus areas that we've been working hard on to implement new strategies. Our second main focus is on environment and climate resilience. We are looking to convert our transit fleet to 100% zero emission vehicles, and are looking to help our community transition their own private vehicles to zero emissions. Personally, I have a plug-in hybrid and a battery electric vehicle. Both of them meet our needs, but it is scary to step away from tried and true technology and try something new. And we're trying to make that transition easier for our community. Another major focus is making sure that we make investments that allow our economy to grow and to improve access to opportunity, medical services, education, and all of the things that we need in our daily lives for our entire community. There is a track record of making investments in places where the most privileged people make use of them, and we are looking to make sure that we include everybody in our investment plan and include the outcomes for those who have been traditionally disadvantaged by transportation investments and projects. We're organized in 5 divisions in the director's office. The Division of Transit is our largest division with around 900 employees. Our next largest division is the Highway Services Division, which these are the folks that are out there keeping our roads safe and clear and in good condition. Our Division of Transportation Engineering is principally charged with delivering the capital improvement program and is largely funded by those capital projects. Our Division of Traffic Engineering works with communities to deal with neighborhood traffic issues, speeding, cut-through traffic, operates the traffic signal system, and is in charge of being the principal safety element of our organization. And then our Parking Division, again, entirely user fee funded, operates and runs the parking operations. Our director's office is relatively small. We have about 25 folks there that are focused on regional policy issues and the overall administration of the transportation program. So how do we help to advance that equity goal in our county? We are focused on providing transit services for those who are unable to afford their own car so that they can make the trips they need to make to live their lives. We did a fair amount of work to understand how transit fares might affect these populations and have implemented a $1 fare, which is half the WMATA fare on our system. We're investing in transportation projects like Flash that improve the reliability of our system and take away that I need to catch the 8:37 bus to get to my 10 o'clock job or I'm late, so that you can have a little bit more flexibility in how you live your life and use transit. And we're looking to make sure that we're providing access both to education, job opportunity, and healthcare through the transit system that we operate. We are there to meet our community's needs. The principal way that people can let us know that services are needed are through the 311 system. Those requests are either dealt with directly by 311s if it's a simple request, or if there's more response needed, they refer those to us and we follow up with residents directly. We also monitor our Twitter and Instagram accounts for service requests and get in touch with folks within about a day of seeing something on those 2 social media platforms that might need our assistance. Our website has contact information in all of our divisions for project and program managers if there's an issue that is very specific and needs that kind of attention. And we always have ongoing public meetings, hearing, and engagement opportunities, both for capital projects and for regulatory changes, whether they're resident permit parking, access restrictions, or abandonments of public right-of-way or other capital projects. Again, transit is one of our biggest elements. We have 4 different transit brands operating in the county. Right on Extra, which is on 355, which is peak period limited stop service. The service most people are familiar with, the regular ride-on service that is across the entirety of the county and provides coverage service to pretty much all of the highly developed areas in the county. The Flash program, which is where a lot of our energy is focused and where we're taking advantage of a lot of federal investment to provide better transit in the county. That's currently in operation on US 29. And the Flex program that's available in the Wheaton-Glenmont area and in Rockville, where you can order a trip on an app or through a call center, pay the regular transit fare, transfer to anywhere in the ride-on and Metrobus network or to Metro Rail with all of the transfer discounts and benefits that those systems provide. The Flash system has been in operation since I think it's October of 2021. And it has been one of our most successful services, carrying about over 2,000 of the 60,000 trips on the system in one of the 85 routes that we operate. We're looking to deploy that network across the entirety of the county. Again, the orange line you see here is the service that's in place. The next service we're going to be providing is on Veers Mill Road, which is the green project here. This project is fully funded for construction, pending receipt of a federal small starts capital infrastructure grant. And then after that, we will move on to implementing the brown line you see here, which is the Maryland 355 project. We also have a second phase of US 29 to provide dedicated busway on US 29. And we have two projects in the planning phase, the New Hampshire Avenue BRT and the North Bethesda BRT. We're not currently working on Georgia Avenue nor University Boulevard as BRT projects, but I will say right now we are installing bus lanes on University Boulevard between Wheaton and Four Corners as part of a quick build project that we have in our capital improvement program. I think I just said all this, so I'll skip this slide. Again, these bus priority lanes, we implemented Germantown Transit Center about 2 years ago. It has done wonders for improving the efficiency of the transit operation around the transit center and reducing the number of conflicts between buses and cars as those buses are making their way to the loading and unloading positions at that transit center. And like I mentioned, University Boulevard is in the process of being implemented right now. The crews are out there doing that work. We are implementing other bus priority treatments through a project known as the Great Seneca Transit Network in the Rockville and Gaithersburg portion of the county. That project is also in construction with a formal groundbreaking to occur later this month. And we are collaborating closely with WMATA and the Maryland State Highway Administration to implement bus-only lanes on Georgia Avenue between 16th Street and the Silver Spring Transit Center. We're doing a lot in the Vision Zero program, a lot of traffic control devices and a lot of pedestrian and bike implementation. This is an example from Spring Street and what's the cross street? 2nd Avenue? I think it's 2nd.
It is 2nd.
2nd, the county's first protected intersection. There are others of these being installed throughout the county now.
That's 3 houses down from Casey Anderson's house.
Perfect. And I haven't seen Casey in a little while, but I know he likes this project. And we have about 102 miles of bike lanes that have been implemented through these programs. Sidewalk implementation is a big focus of us. Sometimes these are contentious. You may have seen some of the news reports about some sidewalks we installed this year, but generally they're appreciated once they're there. They're feared when they're coming and they're appreciated once they're there. But we implement about 7 miles of new sidewalk every year through our Sidewalk Miner program, not counting the ones delivered through other standalone capital improvement projects. We have a lot of people that get really excited about snow, and this winter is projected to be snowier than the past few years. And I can tell you, our highway crews are dedicated. They work long hours, not only in snow, but also in wind and rain events, clearing down trees, clearing flooding, clearing storm drains. And these folks are always ready to serve the needs of our community. May not be in the time frame that everybody wants when we get big storms, because there are 5,400 miles of roads that we need to clear, but nonetheless, these people work day and night to make that happen. Other events that we respond to, this is from Belfast Road, where a culvert disappeared in a massive rainstorm and cut off access to this community. We were able to restore access to that community the same day and then complete the repairs in a longer time frame after that same day response. But our team is really ready to respond to emergencies. There's a bridge program, again, 513 bridges. Most of these bridges are funded by state and federal aid. And we do a cyclical inspection of those bridges, identify repair needs, design repair strategies, and then construct them when they're ready. And it is relatively expensive to repair bridges, usually $2 to $5 million to fix these bridges per bridge. But again, a lot of that, up to 75%, is state and federal aid. We have done other major capital projects. The Department of Transportation managed the Wheaton redevelopment project, which was a $180 million county office building and other public amenities. That project was delivered on time and on budget in the midst of the pandemic, and serves as the headquarters for the Park and Planning Commission and the location of, I think, 6 different county departments. We are excited that more of the building is occupied and that people are using the building and supporting the economy in the Wheaton Central Business District through this building. Other major capital projects, we completed access improvements for the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center and the National Institutes of Health a year or so ago. Again, most of this project was federally funded, and we're very excited to have that improved transit access to those facilities. There's work, the county has funded significant portions of the Purple Line construction and Capitol Crescent Trail construction. That work is now back underway. We're very excited about that. We have not been tagged with any additional costs, even though the costs of the project have been significantly elevated as a result of some of the conflicts with the previous design build contractor. So that's exciting to see that work underway again. In terms of parking, there are 201, that's not right, there are 21 public parking garages, 20 lots, and about 2,000 on-street meters that we operate. Vehicle charging is a big issue. We've been working hard to expand this both through the ChargePoint network that you may be familiar with, and also providing opportunity for new charging providers, including Pepco directly managed and installed charging stations in our parking garages. Capital Bike Share is an important piece of our program. We have been looking to maximize the efficiency of this program to identify the bike share locations that are underutilized and to make sure that we're doing all the work necessary at the bike share stations where the usage is heavier. We mentioned micromobility earlier. Eventually, this will become a permanent element of our program, but we have kept it as a pilot project, mostly because the firms that are participating in this and operating the micromobility systems have been changing rapidly, and we don't yet see enough stability in the system to make it a permanent program. We make sure that people can access these systems. We have a mobile commuter store that travels to locations that are not at our major transit centers, and then we have a fixed location commuter store at the Silver Spring Transit Center where people can buy fare media, do trip planning, and learn about their travel options around the county. That's part of our transportation demand management program that involves all of these options. We're in the midst of changing that program from being purely focused on the commute to work activity to being focused on all transportation choices our residents need to make, so that if you're trying to plan a trip to school, trying to plan a trip to work, trying to plan a trip to shop, trying to plan a trip for medical appointments, all of those options are covered in this program. We're in the process of hiring some additional staff to serve as Travel Smart ambassadors, so that people in residential communities, in addition to employment centers, can take advantage of this service operation. As I mentioned, we're out in the community. Walk to School Day is always a huge event for us. Zeal, the pedestrian safety giraffe, who is marked with stripes to look like a crosswalk, works with our children and our young adults through youth ambassador programs to help advance the pedestrian safety program of the county. And you can see a couple of our council members participating in this year's Walk to School event, which was at the Wheaton Woods Elementary School. And we're also doing this on capital projects in our bus rapid transit program in the upper left, in our stormwater management and community assistance program in the bottom right. And I'm not sure, again, bus rapid transit again on the right. My image of all of you is covering up that image, so it's a little hard to see. So that's the presentation, and I know we have some other questions you'd like answered, but I'll pause there to see if I generated any new questions, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that information. It's been very helpful and great pictures. That camera is very clean, and I have been able to participate in some of the things you highlighted. So happy that you have your team out there working hard. I agree. Both my parents and my brother drive ride-on buses for probably collectively almost 60 years. And so I know you guys are a great employer. You guys do great things in the community. And so definitely thank you for your leadership with the Department of Transportation here in Montgomery County. And so I don't know, anyone had any new questions for Director Conklin? If not, maybe we'll turn to some of the submitted questions. Okay. So definitely one of the, biggest items that I hear a lot about is with White's Ferry. I know we had some recently a meeting with the county council where the private parties, and we did like an all hands on deck, come to Jesus moment, it felt like, and we were trying to get everyone to just decide on some things. And so at the end, there were some takeaways. We were able to clarify some facts, but were you able to get any additional information or traction since that last meeting with the council?
Sure. So this has been an issue that started it started a long time ago, but it really came to the fore in late 2020. And I won't repeat the entire timeline that was reviewed in the council work session. But since that work session, you heard some proposals from Mr. Kuhn, who owns White Ferry LLC, and from Libby Devlin, who manages Rockland Farm in Virginia. We are actively following up with both parties to try to put some substance to some of the claims that they made, and to try to further encourage resolution of this.
Right.
So as recently as last week, we've been in meetings with Rockland Farm, trying to understand what really are the terms that would allow them to reopen the ferry that work for public agencies. We've also been talking to Mr. Kuhn to understand what a significant donation means, and to see whether there's an opportunity to move this forward. We will continue to work with our Loudoun County counterparts, and we have meetings scheduled with them later this week to follow up on the items from that work session. And then lastly, I would just say all of the elected officials, the county executive, county council members, state delegation, and your federal senators and representatives are engaged in this and hoping that something can get resolved. Again, it is a complicated interstate matter that Maryland doesn't have the ability to solve unilaterally. So that's why everybody's staying engaged in this, and we're hoping that sometime soon we can find a resolution here. And unfortunately, there's no breakthrough as of today, but we'll keep working at it. Yeah. Our staff has spent a lot of time on this, and we will continue to until it becomes either evident that it just isn't going to get solved or the solutions at hand.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful, because I think we had the transportation town hall in Germantown, we had the state and you guys there, and then we had the county council. And so I do thank everyone for their time and engagement and just keeping this at the forefront and doing as much as we can. I love how you kind of just stated, now we kind of just know that even though we have the money, there are still certain things that are just out of our hands. And so I've really appreciated how you've really helped everyone whenever you come into the conversation, just pick up with what's being said and done in the history, and just keeping everyone updated. So thank you so much for that. So then the next question we want to turn to was clean and renewable energy. And so on October 23rd this year, you met with the Council's Transportation and Environment Committee to discuss the CIP amendments and supplemental appropriations to the FY24 capital budget. Can you highlight for the community, the hydrogen fuel cell bus grant from the Department of Energy that Montgomery County received? And then, for example, the hydrogen bus fleet and hydrogen station and the electrolyzer site. Just kind of talking about hydrogen and, that R&D and work that's getting ready to be done there.
Yeah, and this is a case where we're learning as we're doing. The county committed to a zero emissions fleet several years ago, sort of around 2020. And we've been working since then to figure out what that means. Our buses have traditionally been fueled by either compressed natural gas or diesel.
Right.
And both of those fueling options are more environmentally friendly than the 25 to 50 people driving their own car, but they are not zero. And we are committed as a county to get to zero emissions by 2035. So we started work on developing the plan for that. The first element of that plan was battery electric buses, and battery electric buses sort of came to be in the late 2010s, and they had a very checkered performance history when they were first rolled out. That has sort of been resolved. By and large, the vehicles are reliable today. We have vehicles from two different manufacturers in our battery electric fleet. They both are meeting our performance expectations on the routes they're running on. But many of our transit routes are long mileage routes. They're over 250 miles a day. And the battery electric buses just simply can't meet that performance need without en-route charging. So we started to explore what other agencies were doing and saw, although very few people had implemented it, most agencies had hydrogen fuel cell buses as part of their plan for zero emissions operation. And when we started to look at our operation out of our Gaithersburg depot off Shady Grove Road, we identified that there are a lot of longer route buses there, and that would be a good place to start a pilot. So we applied, and it wasn't Department of Energy, but it was Department of Transportation Bus and Bus Facilities grant program through the Federal Transit Administration, where we had budgeted for bus acquisition anyway as part of the capital program, and pledged that as a match for federal support to do a hydrogen fueling station and hydrogen bus purchase. The buses themselves are more expensive than conventionally fueled buses and battery electric buses, but there's offsetting savings and staff efficiency associated with that, since they can run a full day's route on one fuel, and the refueling is short, 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, rather than half an hour to 8 hours, depending on the charging technology that's available. And we were awarded that grant. So we're in the process now of installing a microgrid solar project at that depot that will generate solar energy to power the electrolyzer, which will take water from the public water system and convert it to hydrogen, which will serve as a feedstock for the buses. And that bus will use that hydrogen to generate electricity and power the buses from a battery, much like a hybrid vehicle using gasoline, but instead it's using hydrogen to fuel the battery, and the output of that is water. So we're pretty excited about that. We're hoping that it proves to be a successful first implementation. If it is successful, we also see a lot of promise in this for the fuel source for the heavy duty highway service vehicle fleet, which cannot take time out generally to charge. When we're in a storm response, we need to have the vehicles available, and hydrogen is the fuel source we're looking to use that. So this has been a good first effort, and there's a couple different projects that are coming together to actually make the hydrogen vehicles work on our roads. And we think that will all happen in about 18 months from now, that we'll have delivery of the vehicles and be able to test them and have them deployed in the fleet.
So that's really helpful. And I think as part of the conversation, you did provide two alternatives, it was more non-green alternatives, but I thought they sounded viable in terms of, you mentioned you can convert natural gas to hydrogen, or convert industrial ammonia to hydrogen fuel through non-green refining techniques. Are we able to quantify the cost savings if we utilize these alternatives rather than WSSC water and solar generated electricity option? As we know, WSSC is currently asking for rate increases right now, like 11.6%, and probably for the near future, it's going to continue to go up. And so some of that costs will be, comparing. Can you kind of talk about a cost perspective?
Yeah, I can tell you we did not pursue either of those options as part of this grant because the pledge to the Federal Transit Administration was that we would generate green hydrogen for this project.
Okay.
But there have been other efforts to explore the use of natural gas conversion. There are concerns about perpetuating the reliance on fossil fuels that we haven't really embraced that idea. There are some other options for that that may have promise if we're generating methane through landfill.
Right.
That's
Right.
that's otherwise being emitted,
Yes.
or through future food composting.
Yes.
Those are options we are looking at, and I'm not sure. We still have some research to do and some analysis to do. It may be more beneficial to just burn those fuels as they are than to convert them, rather than putting additional energy into it and converting it to hydrogen versus just using that energy in the source that it's in. But we don't have a firm answer on that yet. There may be the need to have some transition plan if we expand this hydrogen fuel source faster to use some of the non-green sources, but that's not our intention. Our intention is to have it green. And in terms of the WSSC rate structure, I can appreciate why that's a concern. I think most of that concern is generated not by the quantity of the water being used in the system, but by the infrastructure repair needs in that system. So I don't think this use of WSSC water is going to have an appreciable impact upon the ratepayers in terms of maintaining the water distribution system. In fact, it may have, I don't want to hypothesize, I'm not sure what effect it will have, but the system is the system and we're going to be using more of it. But again, most of the cost I think is driven by the infrastructure needs of the system, not the quantity of water.
Okay, and maybe I'll pause there. I don't know if there are any current questions or follow-ups on that from Gordy or Joshua or Thessie.
No, good answers. Pleased to hear about the hydrogen initiative. I think from a range point of view, and I suspect all the benefits that you get from having an electric motor versus a combustion motor apply to hydrogen as well as pure electric.
Yeah, it is an electric motor. It's just using hydrogen as a feedstock to keep the battery charged while it's in service.
Do we have an estimate of what the cost savings would be on motor maintenance, moving from combustion to electric motors?
So, it's interesting. All of these technologies are relatively new. So there's not evidence-based experience. The projections are that the hydrogen vehicles will be more expensive to maintain than battery electric, just because there are more mechanical components to that system. So that's why we're kind of putting our toe in the water here with 13 vehicle fleet out of 400 to get our own experience and to let the technology mature before we go further with it. Although it might be more expensive to maintain these vehicles, we're getting more service per day out of the vehicle without deadhead time, or deadhead's the wrong word because it's too technical, right? But it's ineffective time of the bus returning to a charging location, waiting at the charging location, going back into the service, and the time for that to happen, plus the driver being available for that time. I think we're going to see good cost performance for this from all of those factors combined. But I think the battery electric vehicles are going to be shown to be the most cost effective from the vehicle maintenance and fueling cost perspective. But they have these limitations that are going to be offset by the driver productivity and overall fleet productivity. So all of this remains to be seen. They're all projections based on people's expectations right now. So that's why we are kind of going at it as we are, without committing fully to any one strategy yet until we know how they'll all perform.
So on the battery note, kind of one of the big topics now, especially on the green side, is the sourcing of the batteries and the essentially conflict metals that are used to make them and where they're coming from. And I just didn't know if you guys had researched that, because often when you buy a package, it doesn't get into where these batteries are sourced from. And then on the flip side, how these batteries are going to be disposed of Because at the end of the day, they can become quite toxic. And if it's going to stay in Montgomery County, kind of like, what's the plan for that?
Yeah, I mean, the battery sourcing is a little bit beyond our direct area of control. We're going to be required to follow the Buy America provisions in the Infrastructure and Job and Inflation Reduction Acts. And there's only going to be a few providers that are available for these buses in the short term. So I think the strategies to reduce the impact of the battery production are a little bit beyond what we can control as the purchaser of the vehicle. On the back end of this with the battery disposal, there's more and more effort to understand how to recycle the materials that are in these batteries. And there's been a fair amount of work, particularly with the school bus fleet, to understand batteries that aren't meeting the service requirements for vehicle propulsion can be used for grid stabilization, energy storage, and other applications. In our Brookville depot, we've got battery storage for the solar facility, and the load and unload requirements for those batteries are nowhere near as intensive as they are in a vehicle application. So while it's not all known at this time, again, we're learning as we're doing, there's an expectation that both recycling of the battery back into raw materials and reproduction into new batteries, or repurposing of batteries that no longer meet the service requirements for in-vehicle use, will be available at the end of the useful life of these vehicles, which is anywhere between 12 and about 18 years from the time they go into service.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. And so I wanted to drop down to the capital projects because as I watched the Transportation and Environment Committee meeting and the presentation, there was one slide by Director Dice, I believe, that really showed dollar amounts for the costs of the various types of buses. And so baseline, I believe the diesel bus right now, which is the majority of our fleet, is about $588,000. And there's an increased capital cost of $65,000 for CNG bus, which we briefly touched on. And then there's an increased capital cost of $538,000 for electric bus. And again, that's the baseline of 588. And so we're adding those two together. So for electric bus, it's about, I don't know, $1.1 million for electric bus. And that's also increased again for fuel cell bus by $698,000 from the baseline 587. And so these are really big numbers, maybe 2 to 1 to diesel for electric and fuel cell. And so, is this truly the cost of going green, which I believe was part of the discussion? Can you talk about range anxiety and what it is? I've heard it multiple times now used with the county council, and that being a big issue. We touched on it a little bit with like the snow plow equipment, right? There is certain equipment in the fleet that just cannot chance the electric buses not getting the job done in inclement weather, for example. So can you just help us rationalize or justify this large cost to taxpayers and the need ultimately for the investment away from diesel buses?
Yeah, this is a really complicated set of questions. So I'm not saying your questions are too complicated. They are hard questions to answer generally for all agencies.
Okay.
There is no doubt that the capital cost, the initial investment in these buses, is dramatically more expensive than the cost of conventionally fueled vehicles, whether they're CNG or diesel.
Right.
And we do wrestle with that every day. So that initial investment, though, has a number of offsets. So for electric vehicles, most of our electric charging will be delivered through energy purchase contracts, where we're installing charging infrastructure, which will have a set cost for the power for the lifespan of that facility, say for 30 or 40 years. That's a huge difference from the very volatile cost of fossil fuels.
Mhm.
We saw diesel costs and even diesel availability be very limited last year. Diesel costs were very high and availability was very limited. And it creates a lot of uncertainty in the budget
Mhm.
because you may be budgeting for a diesel cost of $4 a gallon. And at times of the year, it's double that. And other times of the year, it's 75% of that. And those costs generally escalate, whereas the electricity costs can be more readily forecast and budgeted because, again, if we're generating the electricity ourselves, we often have a set price for that for the duration of the facility. With battery electric buses, the operating costs are lower.
Mhm.
So you have to look at the life cycle cost. With fuel cell, it was shown in that same analysis you referenced. I think the hydrogen fuel cell was slightly higher
Yes.
than CNG or diesel fuel, but not radically so. And there are hydrogen production credits available through the tax code that offset that so that it becomes in range. So all of those factors go into figuring out what the right mix of these is, along with the performance characteristics. And the other thing to just mention is that, particularly for hydrogen fuel cell, this is probably third generation technology. There are other agencies that have been using it for some time. But like most technologies, as they become more broadly adopted, the unit cost drops
Right.
because the production economies happen.
Mhm.
So yes, in these early days, we may be seeing higher capital costs for these vehicles, and it's frankly difficult to get the battery electric buses right now because of production
Right.
issues. But I think in 3 to 5 years, we'll see these normalize and become maybe not completely in line with the conventionally fueled vehicles if they're even still being produced,
Mm.
but kind of more rational than what they may look like today.
Right.
And again, that's why we started with a purchase of 4 battery electric buses to make sure that they would work. We moved on to 10. We're moving on to 100 at this point, and we're doing a similar plan with the hydrogen fuel cell, starting with 13. I think we can go to 26, and then we need to look at new hydrogen generation capacity. So we're not going all in on any technology while the price curve is where it is for each.
Mhm. Well, that makes sense. At least to help provide more color around the initial investment. And so it sounds like at some point there is a what do you call it, inflection point, right? Where it's like collectively, yes, the initial investment is higher up front for the electric and fuel, but maybe after X amount of years, you see that savings and it then flips to maybe the diesel.
Right.
Okay, I understand that. Any questions there? Anyone? Okay, very good. And so along those same lines, with Climate Action Plan, Council President Glass stated that 42% of our carbon emissions in Montgomery County come from transportation sector. Can you talk about the current zero emissions bus transition plan and the ideal fleet mix for MCDOT, if it's known already, of the vehicle sources? You alluded that right now we're at diesel and CNG. We've upped our electric. We're potentially going to do some hydrogen. Ultimately, are we looking to be what percentage between hydrogen and electric, or can you help us understand there?
Yeah, we haven't quite honed in on what the right total mix is yet.
Okay.
Our expectation is that our Silver Spring depot, which largely has shorter routes, will be 100% battery electric. And that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 170 battery electric buses. Our Nicholson depot, which is in the mid-county, can't support either fueling technology. So we're going to need to replace that facility. And that will most likely, when we do that, be a blended facility, but not entirely sure what the mix is. And then our Gaithersburg depot, which is the other large depot, is going to probably have a stronger lean towards hydrogen fuel cell, given the longer routes that are served from that. But we don't have a precise mix completely ironed out yet. We're hoping to publish a zero emissions transition plan before the end of this year that will give a picture of what we understand today to be that mix. But that mix is going to change pretty much every other year as we see the advances in the technology and the capital availability for each and our service needs. So one of the things to keep in mind is as the battery technology continues to improve, we're going to see more and more routes being able to be served by battery electric, which are going to be at a lower cost generally than the hydrogen fuel cell. So we're not going to overcommit to any one source until today, knowing that both of these technologies are pretty rapidly evolving.
Mhm. That makes sense. And then switching gears a little bit to ride-on buses, I know online, and I'm currently in Up County. How do current and projected ridership counts justify the current levels of service? Are there plans to expand bus service on weekends to Up County, Damascus? How will the Purple Line change these projections, and can we expect more disclosure in next year's budget requests for this?
Yeah, so obviously transit ridership was way down from 2019. We are getting to the point where our numbers are starting to get back in the neighborhood of where they were with the full transit service. In the last year's budget, we did reduce the baseline ridership or the baseline service level across the system to better match with ridership. You know, so we continue to monitor that and to make service adjustments based on where the ridership is. As a rule, we try to keep frequencies at least 30 minutes. We don't do that on every route, but you have to have some general availability of the system in order for people to be comfortable using it. So that's another factor. It's not just ridership driven, but it's availability of the system. So, you know, I often say we don't look at a residential street and say it's not being driven on enough, so we should stop maintaining it. The same is true with transit. Yes, it needs to be used, and it needs to be used at a reasonable level, but low ridership at a particular bus at a particular time doesn't mean that it isn't needed. It is needed by the people that are using it, and there has to be some basic expectation of what service is there for people to use it. We have seen a shift from peak hour, peak direction commuting to general use throughout the 7 days of the week and all hours of the day. So in the Ride-On Reimagined plan, which is nearing its conclusion, there are recommendations to change the balance of service from peak weekday service to more reliable all-day transit services.
Yeah.
And in terms of Damascus and Up County, we are looking at these flex service areas where you can use the Ride-On Flex app or the call center to identify that you want to ride. And those services would serve a zone in the lower density portions of the county and then connect to a major transit center, whether that's Germantown or Shady Grove, so that you can make transfers to other systems. So we are looking at a change in the overall profile. It happens 3 times a year. We make service adjustments, and we'll be implementing that plan over a period of time as the budget allows. So we've developed Ride-On Reimagined to largely be budget neutral, except for some service expansions for cross-county east-west services and for some of these flex concepts that you've seen.
So I have 2 follow-up questions. One, I know last year as part of the budget, I think it was Councilmember Glass, like he was like, well, why can't we keep it at 0? But I think ultimately we said we're going to do $1. Do you think that's going to come back up this year?
I'm not sure, because the fiscal pressures are different on the county this year. One of the things that we had that we want to achieve is restoring the fare system equivalency between Metrobus and Ride-On. We are not equivalent now, but Ride-On or Metrobus has implemented an equity-based fare program. So there may be the ability to restore, people may not like this, but to restore the Ride-On fare to $2 and have the equity fare program provide that 50% discount so that it's the same across both systems. Or, you know, it may be it may just be left alone. I'm not sure what the budget discussion is going to look like. You can do zero fare, but it just means there's less resource available to support the system. So we at some point have to understand that we're going to be making trade-offs between the amount of service available and the fare for that service.
And then making sure I understand your response correctly. If I live in somewhere in Damascus, maybe off of Woodfield Road over there, and there is no bus service on Saturday, I think it's the 90 bus. There's no service on Saturday. I can call the Flex or use the app, and one of the Flex, the smaller buses will come and connect me to the closest route that is running for that day.
That is what's in the plan. That's
Oh.
not currently available.
Okay, I like that plan. That sounds like a temporary solution to getting people.
Yeah. So, at the moment and probably for the next year, there will not be that weekend service. But if and when this Flex concept is implemented, that's what would happen. Is the Ride on Flex would do a collection and distribution of passengers in the greater Damascus area, and then run to the transit center, most likely Germantown,
Right.
Where you could transfer to the rest of the system.
Right. Okay. Very nice. Any comments, Josh or Gordy? If not, I will maybe ask one more question of Director Conklin. Okay, well, I know one hot topic item was probably one of our last questions is I-495 Beltway expansion. I know there was a meeting yesterday, and unfortunately I was not able to attend at the local high school. But what's the county's current position on toll lanes and additional lanes? How will WSSC costs be for relocating buried pipes be reimbursed? How much of the projected cost will be funded by state and federal programs, and then maybe even attached to that would be maybe the impact to our neighborhoods or eminent domain and things like that to really help with the equity and people that potentially may not physically be able to move if eminent domain is done here. So can you just talk about that project and to those concerns?
Sure. I don't have specific answers to all of your questions because a lot of this is in a great state of flux with the Moore administration and taking a new approach to this. So the first thing I'd like to highlight is there is another public meeting tomorrow night in Gaithersburg. I think it's at 6:30. I'm looking at my own calendar, so that may or may not be reliable, but at the Doubletree Hotel in Gaithersburg, MDOT is hosting an open house tomorrow. The county, I think, has expressed general support for looking at this project again through a fresh lens to try to address many of the issues you identified, to try to make sure that the impacts of the project are as minimal as they can be.
Right.
The cost to users of this system is fair and reasonable. And that the issues principally at the American Legion Bridge are addressed, and that the entirety of the 270 corridor, it has a solution, because the previous plan didn't address the needs of 270 north of Gaithersburg. So I really recommend that everybody understand what MDOT is proposing now, to look at the exhibits that they have at these open houses, and I'm sure they'll have them online, and to develop a full set of new thoughts and comments based on the new approach that the state is taking. I think the county executive has said that if a good plan emerges, there's a good plan. If not, then there's opportunity to identify the flaws in the new plan. But it does look like the Maryland Department of Transportation, not us, but the Maryland Department of Transportation, is taking a fresh look at this and has all the options on the table in terms of both how to finance this project, what the physical form of the project is, and what other transit, pedestrian, and bike investments might occur with this project. So please go and see what information is presented and make sure that they have all of your input as they start to figure out how to chart a course forward from where the project had ended with the preferred selected vendor withdrawing late last year.
Right.
How Maryland might advance the project at this point.
Awesome.
I know
Okay.
that sounds like a non-answer, but there aren't a lot of specifics
Yeah.
to respond to about what the current proposal is.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And definitely we will continue our advocacy and reach out to MDOT to at least, make them aware of some of the conversations and thoughts that we have. I don't know, Josh, did you have any follow-up to those comments?
No, that was a good answer. Thank you. I do want to change subjects now if it's appropriate.
Sure, we can take that last question. Is that okay, Director Conklin?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Perfect. So a lot of people have been noticing lately the uptick in the new traffic cameras, speed cameras that have been showing up all throughout the county. Last that I was involved, we knew that the Montgomery County had a limited amount of cameras on the contract they had with the vendor. There was a vendor change some time ago, and I was wondering if the new uptick in these came with the vendor change, and how is that revenue broken down and being used within Montgomery County? Because there's some inklings about Montgomery County actually getting relatively low revenue from that program.
So I'm not the best person to answer your questions because that program is managed by the police department.
Okay.
But I can tell you that there was a significant backlog of desired speed camera installations under the old contract, and I believe the new vendor has been moving forward with making those implementations. I know generally that the speed camera revenue has not been increasing, and that's fine. The purpose of the speed camera program is to result in lower operating speeds and improve safety on the road. So it's not a revenue program. Yes, there are revenues generated from the fines, but that's not the goal, to maximize revenue from the program. Beyond that, I can't really speak to the particulars of what the new vendor has been doing, or any other aspects of that. But the Department of Transportation is supportive of the automated enforcement programs, and we generally have seen across all of the different programs, the school bus cameras, the red light cameras, and the speed cameras, that it's been having the effect that's wanted of fewer violations of those laws occurring where those technologies have been deployed, and avoiding both the manpower and potentially inappropriate elements of in-person enforcement. So I think the overall experience has been positive, and we are looking to have more capabilities as a county to do automated enforcement going forward.
Yeah, we were the only concern we had, and we agree that safety is a key. They've come up in some good spots up and down along, especially Georgia Avenue, University, where they're needed. Some of the concern was that of the individual fine or of the revenue taken, Montgomery County's, I guess, quote unquote, cut was relatively low, and heavy amounts of that dollars were going back to the vendor, as opposed to being utilized by the county.
Yeah, I'm not privy to the specifics of that
Okay.
contract, so I can't answer your question. Sorry.
Yeah, it's funny because the police always say, "Oh, that's an MDOT program," and you guys are saying that's a police program.
The enablement of the automated enforcement is a state law issue, but the police department manages the program for the county.
Do you know who do they manage the contract?
I believe they do. They have an automated traffic enforcement unit within the police department.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That would conclude our meeting with Director of Montgomery County Departments of Transportation with you, Chris Conklin. We definitely want to give you the last word. Can you please help us understand how we can help get the word out to the community? How can we help you continue to be successful in the upcoming year?
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I think these were all really thoughtful questions. Obviously, there's going to be a capital budget and operating budget proposal for next year. I encourage everybody to take a look at what projects are proposed and what programs are proposed. And there's both two elements of this. There's a cost element. Yes, these things cost money, but they're also investments, and they improve the ability of our residents to meet their daily needs, and they can also foster growth in our tax base if they're done appropriately. So think of it both of the cost lens and the investment lens when you see those options. And if anybody needs services from us, I know it sounds like a cop-out, but it's great to start with 311 because a lot of times 311 has the answer and they have it ready for you. If that's not the case, we're happy to help any constituent in Montgomery County resolve issues they may have with the transportation system by contacting us through one of our divisions directly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time again. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Right.